Over the past decade and some change, anime from Japan has become more accepted among the populace, leading to some people who you never thought would watch anime to know something like Jujutsu Kaisen. But as popular as anime is right now, what's evident is that the most popular kind of anime was and still is shonen anime. Lots of people confuse what exactly shonen is, but to set the record straight, it's the demographic of teenage boys. The main demographic of shonen manga is to appeal to these boys. If they get attention from other groups, great, but they primarily focus on these people. Then you have the other demographics such as seinen, which appeals to adult men, shoujo for teenage girls, and josei for adult women, which gets no love. But even among these demographics, it gets more specific. As shonen is made for teenage boys, they made sure to create stories with lessons that these boys need to learn to become better people later in life. This leads to the creation of what fans call the shonen underdog. Stories where the protagonist is severely disadvantaged but has a great dream they'll pursue no matter what. These stories inspire you to do the same, which is great, but there's something wrong with some of these stories, especially the famous ones. You look at the three most famous versions of these stories, with Naruto, Black Clover, and My Hero Academia, and you see a certain pattern. At first, they seem disadvantaged, but very quickly something happens to them, resulting in them becoming someone with the highest potential in the story, effectively making them one of the strongest in the end of the series. Whether it be Naruto having a giant chakra pool of the Nine Tails inside of him, and the later reveal that he's part of a special clan, or going from no magic to anti-magic in a world of magic, or going from no quirk to having one of the strongest quirks in your verse. How can these stories be an inspiration when it's implying that you would need a crazy amount of luck to be given an ability to pursue your dreams? You can argue it's realistic, but this kind of realism where the only way to reach the top is with your willpower and crazy luck goes against the point that these stories are trying to make. These stories are trying to tell you anything is possible, but where would Naruto be without Kurama or his special clan lineage? Where would Asta be without anti-magic? And where would Izuku be without One for All? Not only that, but what adds onto this is the fact that the story then brings in a side character who would make for a far better representation of the underdog story, as they don't have any crazy luck like the protagonist and work with the skill set that they have. That is why, when watching a certain anime, it was a breath of fresh air that these underdogs had no luck whatsoever when it came to their upbringing, and that this show was realistic in its depiction of making progress in your goals. The anime that I'm talking about? Ahiru no Sora. This anime follows the protagonist Sora, a short basketball player who wants to participate in actual leagues and tournaments. I didn't know where else to put this, but Sora's voice actor is the same for Koichi from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Koichi is always depicted as being extremely short, but in actuality, he's only 5'2", while Sora is 4'10". In the JoJo universe, Sora would be struggling to get on a bench. Back to the topic though. When trying to join the basketball club at his high school, he realizes that it's not much of a club, just a group where delinquents hang out. This doesn't deter Sora from trying to join though, even if he gets beaten multiple times. And when becoming a member, he tries multiple times and finally becomes successful in convincing them to play the game in hopes of becoming an actual recognized team. But they all suck. After all, they made the basketball club because their high school forces every student to be in at least one club, not because they love the sport. But once again, this doesn't stop Sora. With a smile on his face, he starts from the basics, teaching the punch, how to dribble a ball, and so forth. Later on, they get their first practice match. This match stemming from the characters getting into a fight with some punks from another school. And this practice match is a chance for the viewer to see how far our protagonist's team is from everyone else. Just from describing the beginning, because I want at least part of the video to be fully spoiler free, Sora could have stopped at any point. A point is made that multiple people have tried to join the club and gave up at one of the many points that Sora was in, giving up on the sport of basketball entirely. But Sora's love for the game will make him play no matter what, and his love also sees through these punts and how maybe they'd enjoy the game too. Going into more depth, let's focus on each character and their themes. You have this trio of Chucky, Nambe, and Yasuhara. There are multiple instances throughout the show where they give up, especially Chucky and Nambe, and it's usually for two reasons: embarrassment and too much work. It's common for teenage boys to go through this since they care about looking cool, but it's still a lesson that can be learned at any age, and it's when you care how other people see you. These three can't even dribble a ball properly, and sometimes get laughed at during practice by other groups because of it. But they got better at dribbling the ball, didn't they? In the first game, Sora's right arm gets too strained to shoot properly, so he does something that his mother taught him: the two-handed shot that is mostly used by women. This results in him getting laughed at by the peanut gallery because, haha, he shot like a girl. But he got the shot in, didn't he? He still scored. Who cares how he looked when doing it? Typically, Chucky and Nambe would have laughed too, but even after only getting slightly better at dribbling, they understood. Who cares how you look as long as you get the job done? You can look like a complete fool on the court, but if you score, who cares what others say? You still won. But the other point of hard work that the trio face links back to the protagonist Sora very well. Early on in the series, it's implied that they think the only reason Sora wants to play is because he's good, but it's the other way around. A point is made multiple times throughout the story that because of Sora's height, he had to work thrice as hard than others to make up for it. He's good at shooting, yes, but not because he was simply born with an innate gift of shooting. This man, Sora, spends every night shooting 1,000 three-pointers even after his normal training. He is adamant about his dream of winning a tournament, and he won't let his height stop him. Later on in the series, Nambe wants to learn how to shoot and asks Sora for tips, to where Sora recommends doing the two-handed shot as practice for more stabilization. Nambe's retort is wanting to learn the one-handed shot because Sora looks cool doing it, but it once again circles back to winning. If you're holding a trophy stating you're the best, who cares how you look when doing it? The next characters I want to focus on are the twins, Chiaki and Momoharu. These two members of the club are actually decent at basketball, but gave up for different reasons. No matter how much Momoharu practiced in middle school, he simply never got better at shooting, losing any hope at the game as he would be replaced on his team with someone who can shoot. Momoharu can be seen as an example of working hard and getting nothing out of it, and at that point Momoharu can be seen as justified for wanting to drop the sport. But something that never crossed his mind was to be beneficial in other ways rather than a shooter. Seeing Momoharu's aggressiveness and playstyle firsthand, Sora was able to see his potential as a power forward or center. With his height and strength, it would make it much easier for his team to catch the rebound, and he would be beneficial in catching the ball during the start of the game as well. A similar journey occurs with the coach and manager of the team, although not on screen. Now. Yes, that's her name. She absolutely loves basketball and has played ever since she was a kid, but she hit an eventual limit. Just like Momoharu, she was putting in hours and saw no return, but instead entered the sport in a different way. Using her analytical skills, she was able to return to the sport she loved by helping teams as an overseer instead of an active participant. She focuses on the strengths and weaknesses of both her own and the opposing team to create a proper plan. Momoharu and now is what happens when you become too headstrong in your fantasy of your goals. Momoharu quit basketball altogether simply because he couldn't play exactly how he wanted to, instead of looking for other paths to benefit his teammates. These two show that there are multiple ways to achieve your dream. It's okay if it's not exactly like you envisioned it, because you still achieved what you wanted to do, and that in itself is something to be proud of. I sort of got off topic by bringing it in now, when I was supposed to be talking about the twins, but where else would I mention her? Now for the other twin, Chiaki. Chiaki as a character can be tied back to the trio as a person who cares how others see him. His rule was always there was no point in playing if he wasn't going to win. Because of that, he infamously left a game during the halftime as he saw no way for his team to make a comeback. I loved Chiaki as a character. I barely laugh out loud when watching shows, but I did it a lot for this one, and it mostly had to do with him. He constantly tries to date people, and in one way or another ends up being all alone. For instance, the first time we meet him, he is for whatever reason under the bridge where Sora gets beaten up and says he's here to meet a girl he met online. It sounds romantic at first, and then he proceeds to say he's been waiting under there for the past 24 hours. I want to add that the comedy in the show does work on double standards though, in some cases. There is a character that I'll only bring up here since she is fairly irrelevant after a certain point, but there is a scene where the character of Madoka is getting harassed by some people, and your heart drops wondering what's going to happen to her, as this show sometimes does get dark. But is it going that dark in this instance? Well, Chiaki then comes in to save her, which is really respectable of you, Chiaki, except that you and the others were doing the same thing earlier in the show, and it was a gag. Double standards like that bother me because when Chiaki does it, it's not seen as harassment because he's one of the protagonists, but when others do it, it's a very serious matter now. Okay, buddy. But some of Chiaki's comedic antics of course ties back to caring how he looks though. He doesn't want to look uncool, especially to the ladies, so he refuses to do anything that has the slightest chance at embarrassing him. But something important about his ideals is his priorities. As much as he cares what others think of him, he values his brother and friends more. He came to respect Sora's love for the game that it overrides his rule of what others think of him, at least to an extent. Chiaki also shows the consequences of getting too stuck in your own head, as, once again, no spoilers, during one of the games, something happens to Chiaki that pisses him off, and he gets benched to cool off. While on the bench, he starts spouting off lots of negativity, such as believing his team sees him as worthless, and that now sees him as an awful player. This negativity was getting so out of hand that I was starting to believe it myself, that Chiaki is the weakest link on the team and shouldn't even be a part of it. When Chiaki finally snapped out of it, both Chiaki and I realized that none of this was true. He made one simple mess up and spiraled. Now doesn't hate him. His team relies on him when he's on the court. The only negativity that Chiaki has dealt with is his own. It shows how powerful your mind is when Chiaki quite literally manifests his own problems and then projects it onto others, creating this negative feedback loop. Where if someone is negative towards Chiaki, it started from his mindset, but now that someone actually did do something negative to Chiaki, he makes it spiraling worse. Like Chiaki, you need to sit down and step out of the situation you're in. What is actually happening? And what is all in your head? By taking a breather like this, you can see that the situation you're in is most likely not as bad as you're making it out to be. Chiaki messed up, but there's still multiple attempts after this. It isn't the end, and it's not the end for you. Can you tell this is my favorite character? Now, these are characters that I introduced later on, so I'll put more of a spoiler warning here. I'm putting as many spoiler warnings as I can because I really want you to check this show out. It's great. We later meet a problem for the school, more than the punch we come to love. Kite. A freshman light Sora who tried to join the basketball team, but was one of the few who gave up after simply seeing that it was a front. The only person to support his dreams was his hardworking father, and after his death, he wants to make him proud by winning a championship. His mother doesn't support him and quickly remarries a man who is nothing but a bully to Kite, telling him to act better. Not because Kite should be a better person, but because Kite's behavior will look bad on his stepfather. Having such an upbringing led to Kite developing a selfish mindset where he only looks out for himself and his little sister, because who else will? When compared to our team, Kite is an amazing player, and when he eventually gets recruited, he gets revealed as a big fish in a small pond, because let's be real, almost anyone would be a better player than someone learning how to dribble. He has an incredibly selfish playstyle as if he's playing 1v5 on the court and grows to become a better team player. He can still play as a selfish prick, but learns to swallow his pride and makes calls that support the team overall rather than himself. When a coach from a far better team attempts to poach Kite, it really gives a sense of despair. After practicing with the team for so long, he has become an integral part, but Kite as we met him would take the offer in a heartbeat. Kite is a selfish person that wants to get to the championship no matter what. But when he denies the offer, it makes us realize how far he has come as a character, even if he doesn't want to admit it. For the first time since his father, he has found a group of people who see him as more than a punk, as someone who can benefit others positively rather than ruin them or their reputation. He would never do anyone who treated him as a person any wrong, and it cemented him as one of my favorite characters in the series. Really, everyone in the main cast is a great character. It's hard to choose one favorite. The next character that later joins the team is Kaneme, a freakishly tall player. Because of his height, previous teams always relied on him, expecting him to be an incredibly good player, simply because he was tall. He's a decent player overall, but one thing always held him back, and it was his anemia. Due to his condition, he was never able to build up the strength or stamina to be an important member of any team, as he'd tap out in a couple of minutes. Or, during integral moments of the game, his anemia could act up, costing the whole match. The expectations put on his shoulders weighed far too much to keep playing, so he simply quit, lying about how bad his anemia is to avoid getting recruited. Kaname's character works both ways in handling expectations from others and tempering your expectations of other people. It reaches a point where you can no longer handle the disappointment and vanish. But you should never let these expectations stop you from fulfilling your passion. If it's something that you truly want to do, then failure to meet expectations shouldn't stop you, as you should always be trying your best and doing your best. After all, it's the best thing you can do. When putting expectations onto people, especially when you're highly vocal about it, it can be draining to that person. Constantly being put in a box and getting disappointed in someone when someone doesn't fill the expectations or assumptions that you came up with. It's unfair. Like Sora is to Kaname and pretty much everyone else on the team, you can be supportive and push others to try their hardest, but don't expect the impossible. Someone who just learned how to dribble won't be able to make a layup right after. Expecting great things from people isn't a bad trait, but if not tempered, can lead to the opposite, where the person has a downward spiral like Kaname, who completely quit the sport. Now for the protagonist that I've been sprinkling about throughout the video, Sora. And quite frankly, there isn't much to say that I haven't already said when talking about the other characters. Sora is a very active protagonist who tries to elevate the team as much as possible so that not only can they win, but everyone can have a good time while they're doing it. In order to be on an equal playing field as other taller players, he practices so much that his footwork and three-pointers are next level. Sora sees the best in everyone and doesn't want anyone's potential to go to waste. I guess you can call him the average shonen protagonist because of it, but a lesson he has to learn is the opposite of Kite's, and it's to be more selfish. At certain points in the matches throughout the show, he has completely sold a few times just from the fact that he gives others an opportunity to shine rather than scoring himself. It sounds like a nice thing to do, but if you can score, then go ahead and score. There is such a thing as being too much of a team player, especially if it costs you the game. And so, Kite and Sora can be seen as two sides of the same coin. Players who are trying to reach the balance of being the ultimate team player. Someone who your team can rely on to make the best plays possible. Either selfish or selfless, if the moment calls for it. Now, this aspect of character writing is more general, but it has to do with the opposing team that our protagonist faces. They're given such characterization that each match leaves you satisfied regardless of which team wins. When you learn about members of the other team, there's a small part of you that kind of wants to root for them, and so when our protagonists do lose, it doesn't sting as much, because you know that both teams put their all into it. It gives a chance for there to be realism, as our characters constantly getting what they want goes against the point of an underdog story, but it also sucks if they constantly lose, right? Another aspect of realism I want to add is specifically putting a spotlight on an opposing team member. Chiba, who is voiced by the same voice actor as Zoro, so just imagine this dude breaking ankles. Later on, when he graduates from high school and is all around getting recruited by different colleges for being such a good player, we find out that he isn't planning on going to college anymore. When asked why, he brings up that he wants to get into the job market immediately. He has 7 younger siblings and wants to buy one of them a nice foot bag before starting school. The kind of realism here is tragic, where some people simply don't have the luxury of pursuing their dreams. Chiba is adamant that he'll find a way to play basketball again, but it's not possible for it to be in a more professional setting anymore. He has to sacrifice his dream for the betterment of others. Now, this is the point where there will be heavy spoilers. If you like what I said before this point, then I implore you, really implore you, to please watch this show. It's amazing. I'm really only adding this part to cement my point that this anime is a great underdog story with tons of proper written realism. Now, you can add the 007 meme to just about anything. If you apply that meme to this show, it'd be 0 girlfriends obtained, 0 matches won, and 7 hours of my time wasted. No, I'm not joking. In the span of 50 episodes, our team won 0 times. This is why I brought the point earlier about the characterization of the opposing teams. You'd assume that if your protagonist constantly lost, that you dropped the show, but seeing how hard everyone works fills you with hope, even when losing should fill you with the exact opposite. Seeing how much hard work the opposing team puts in their practices makes you at least respect them. The other aspect that adds onto the realism is how detailed it gets into every member's practice. With learning how to dribble, improving your stamina, and learning how to do a layup, you don't only get explained to you, but you can see it all as well in every coming game how much these people have improved. And that's why it's not as bad as it sounds when hearing that these guys lose every match. These guys have made such noticeable progress in the span of a few months, once again adding to the realism because you really expect people who retired from basketball or never played to dead as people who never did in the span of a few months. This point gets heightened when the boys do a dumb practice match against the girls' team and get absolutely decimated. Sure, on an individual level, each player on the boys' team is better, but they suck with cooperation. Later, we learned that the girls' basketball team in their school never even won a game, so after that review, I never expected our boys to win. At all. Another point that's made that the duo Chucky and Nabe never played basketball until the show, and they're competing against people who have been playing since they were kids. They're learning the basics that their opponents learned when they were toddlers. But I know for a fact that if you took the team from the final episode and placed them in their previous matches, then they would have won. This anime shows how even if there is a large gap between you and your ambitions, the gap will close little by little as long as you put in the effort. After watching the anime, I looked up the manga and saw that it's still going on all the way from 2003, while the anime aired in 2019. I'm saying this as a person who has only watched them lose their matches, and even though they thought about it, never truly gave up. I know these guys will reach their goals. It's only a matter of time. A show geared towards teenage boys teaches you how to support others without unrealistic expectations, how there are multiple avenues of reaching your goals and passion, so keep an open mind, how not everyone has the luxury of reaching their goals, so be grateful if you can, how to stay away from negative thinking, seeing the possible best in everyone, not caring what others think. The hard work that you have to put in might be more than you think, but it's worth it. That there is always a chance for redemption, and of course, to always chase your dreams no matter what. Now give me a second season already.